Just imagine, for a moment, that one day you all step out onto the streets, going about your normal routine, and suddenly, without any warning, all the garbage that humanity has ever thrown into the oceans, rivers, and drains starts pouring down violently from the sky, hitting the ground with a force that makes it feel as though the world itself is collapsing under the weight of human carelessness. And yet, this is not merely ordinary trash. Even the Titanic, the ship that sank over 113 years ago in the ocean, has now been thrown onto the land as if it were nothing more than a heap of scrap metal, completely discarded and abandoned. But who could have done this? How was it done, and for what reason? Upon conducting a detailed investigation into this unprecedented phenomenon, the government discovered the existence of a very special, highly advanced species living in the depths of the ocean, creatures whose intelligence far surpassed that of humans. For countless generations, they had remained hidden beneath the waves, deliberately avoiding any contact with humanity and keeping their existence secret from all human knowledge. These extraordinary beings were responsible for returning every bit of garbage back to humans because they had grown utterly frustrated and exhausted with the way humans continuously polluted their ocean, filling them with waste and refuse. To manage the situation and sort out this extraordinary crisis, the government decided that a formal meeting with these creatures was necessary. However, when the creatures finally arrived at the meeting, they delivered a very clear and uncompromising message to humanity. If the oceans were not cleaned completely and immediately, they would eradicate every human being on Earth. They warned that the cataclysm they would unleash would be so immense and unimaginable that no human could even dream of its scale or consequences. It was necessary to understand what had caused these creatures to become so overwhelmingly angry in the first place. A few days prior, a man named Barkley was peacefully sleeping at his home when, without warning, his phone suddenly received a signal indicating an emergency mission. Observing the notification, Barkley woke his daughter gently, as he normally would, and began preparing for the unexpected situation. What Barkley did not realize at that moment was that this single message would completely alter his destiny, along with the fate of the entire world, in ways he could never have imagined. Barkley then took his daughter and went downstairs to the car waiting for them, where an officer named Hannah had arrived specifically to escort Barkley on a critical special mission. Before leaving for the mission, Barkley first ensured that his daughter was safely with his wife, after which he accompanied Hannah to the airport. Upon arriving, they were joined by several other officers who were also preparing for the same mission. Once aboard the plane, General Austin personally briefed the team, meticulously explaining each step of the mission. He emphasized that this operation was of the utmost importance, potentially capable of changing the course of the entire world. The origins of this mission traced back to an incident 1 week prior, when a group of fishermen had ventured into the ocean to catch fish. During their routine fishing, the nets captured not only fish, but also an unknown creature that no human had ever laid eyes upon in their entire lifetime. As soon as this strange creature saw humans, it let out a tremendous roar, a sound that could have shaken the very air around them. But before it could act further, one of the fishermen on the boat fired his weapon, killing the creature instantly. This extraordinary being was later identified and named Homo Aqua, and the military was preparing to study it in order to determine whether it was a friend of humanity or a potential threat. Meanwhile, all the officers engaged in examining video recordings of Homo Aqua, seeking clues and insight. However, Barkley had no access to the password required to view these videos, as he was not actually the person Hannah was supposed to meet. In reality, Barkley was only a desk worker, tasked with bringing tea and biscuits for the officers. Hannah, however, mistakenly assumed Barkley was Officer Roger and brought him along. Officer Roger, it turned out, was on vacation in another city and had deliberately left Barkley in his place, providing his phone and asking him to stay at his residence temporarily. Upon realizing the seriousness of the mission, Barkley attempted to explain everything to the officers, clarifying his identity and role. Yet, since no delays could be tolerated in this critical operation, the team proceeded without hesitation, taking Barkley along to the island where the fishermen had kept the body of Homo Aqua. The body was stored in a warehouse-type structure, suspended in a manner that suggested the creature might already be dead. Seeing this, Austin and the others were filled with shock and disbelief. At that moment, one of Austin's colleagues presented a pearl-like object, indicating that it had been found near Homo Aqua's neck. The intricacy of the carving on the pearl astonished Austin even further. Only humans had ever been capable of such detailed craftsmanship, shaping a material with such precision and intelligence. This realization led to an even more startling conclusion. If Omiqua, the species of Homo Aqua, had created this pearl, then they possessed intelligence equal to or greater than humans. Believing that members of Omiqua's species might still inhabit the oceans, Austin, along with his team, prepared to head toward the shore equipped with specialized devices. Barclay accompanied them, though the sight of the dead Homo Aqua filled him with sorrow. Before approaching the ocean, Barclay prayed for the soul of the fallen creature, seeking to honor its spirit. Only after this act of respect did he move toward the shoreline. At the ocean's edge, Austin prepared a device and, while sipping tea, broadcast a hello message across the entire sea in the form of radio waves, hoping that Homo Aqua would receive it and respond. However, by nightfall, as no signals had been received, the team retired to their tents for sleep. Austin had left 2 soldiers behind to watch over the body of Homo Aqua. During the night, after everyone had gone to sleep, the warehouse floor began to transform into a treacherous swamp. The bodies of the 2 soldiers slowly sank into the ground, paralyzing their minds in terror at the sudden unnatural event. Then, suddenly, a Homo Aqua leapt from beneath the surface, dragging the suspended body of the deceased Homo Aqua into the ground. It created a swamp along its path, moving toward the ocean. After its departure, the ground returned to normal. The movement of the creature triggered alarms across the area, prompting Austin, Barclay, Hannah, and the rest of the team to rush to the scene. Once there, they were bewildered as to where Homo Aqua and the 2 soldiers had disappeared. Austin attempted to contact the soldiers via walkie-talkie and was shocked to hear the voice coming from beneath the ground. Upon digging slightly, they discovered the dead body of the female soldier. The team was horrified beyond comprehension, fully realizing the immense danger posed by Homo Aqua. Barclay, terrified, retreated to the ocean's edge, where Austin approached him, urging him to remain courageous. As they conversed, numerous Homo Aqua suddenly appeared in the water. Observing them, the soldiers reported back to Austin, who immediately led Barclay, Hannah, and other team members to the area. Hannah handed Barclay a camera, instructing him to record everything carefully. They hid behind large containers, observing the Homo Aqua closely. After a period of standing silently in the water, Austin approached the Homo Aqua with a translator device and communicated clearly that they were friends and meant no harm. The Homo Aqua accepted this, indicating they too did not wish to fight humans. However, they expressed the need to hold a global meeting, convening with humans from around the world simultaneously. Austin agreed to organize this unprecedented gathering. Subsequently, Homo Aqua revealed themselves to cities worldwide, approaching humans and requesting meetings. The news spread like wildfire, causing fear among the public that Homo Aqua might attack. Citizens began pressuring governments for an urgent meeting. To facilitate this, the government demolished a riverside building and installed large pipes, enabling Homo Aqua to enter safely. Barclay was invited to attend the meeting, though he was terrified and confessed his fear to his wife and daughter. Still, he had no choice but to participate. The meeting was broadcast live, with prime ministers around the world watching and representatives from multiple countries present. Once preparations were complete, water was pumped through the pipes, allowing Homo Aqua and other oceanic species to enter. Among them was a female Homo Aqua named Salt, whose species could breathe on land. Salt entered the building alongside 2 companions. Upon arrival, a common representative welcomed her and presented her with a gift, a plant from the Himalayas. Salt began speaking, demonstrating fluency in multiple languages, eliminating the need for any translator. Angrily, she then presented a gift of her own, 2 eggs belonging to her species, which had been damaged due to human pollution in the ocean. The representative immediately apologized and resumed the meeting according to protocol. However, at this point, Salt revealed something even more astonishing. She actually did not want to speak with the representative who was present. Upon hearing this statement, everyone in the room was completely stunned, their minds reeling with disbelief. But then, Salt pointed toward Barclay, who was sitting nearby, and indicated that they wanted to communicate through this very human, appointing him as the representative for the discussion. Upon hearing this, everyone present, including Barclay himself, was left in utter shock and amazement. Salt further explained that among all the humans present, Barclay was the most honorable and virtuous, because after witnessing the death of a fellow human, he had shown respect and prayed sincerely for the departed soul. This act of compassion had marked him as exceptional in Salt's eyes. Trembling and extremely nervous, Barclay tried to reason with her, insisting that he was just an ordinary human with no connection whatsoever to her or her people. However, Salt and her companions were resolute. They would only engage in conversation with Barclay, and if Barclay refused, they threatened to attack all the humans on the surface to protect their home. Faced with Salt's unwavering demand, the officials present requested a brief period to deliberate on the matter. Meanwhile, numerous guards took Barclay aside under heavy security for protection. Shortly after, the Director of Intelligence, Kate, arrived to speak with Barclay directly. Initially, Kate assumed that perhaps Barclay already knew Salt, yet Barclay himself insisted that he had never seen Salt's face before in his life. Kate then instructed her officers to extract all relevant information about Barclay, realizing that due to media coverage, he had become a highly recognizable and well-known figure. For his safety, several government soldiers immediately relocated Barclay's daughter Carby and his wife Barbara to a secure hotel to ensure that no ordinary human would inadvertently endanger them. At the entrance gate, Barclay was still visibly apprehensive, fearing that Kate might treat him like a dangerous criminal or terrorist. But Kate did not act in such a manner, recognizing that no nation in the world had any choice but to comply with Salt's demands. Consequently, the decision was made to appoint Barclay as the new representative, an announcement that quickly made headlines. Later that night, Kate personally accompanied Barclay to meet Salt, informing her that humans were ready to follow her instruction. However, since it was late at night, most others had already left, and the meeting would continue the next day. After a brief conversation, Salt departed, leaving Barclay in the care of the authorities. He was then seated in a secure vehicle, with clear instructions that the next day he would speak with Salt, conveying only the exact words provided to him. Reluctantly, Barclay agreed, after which he was reunited with his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, in a laboratory within the city, researchers began examining the eggs provided by Salt. Once their initial research concluded, a lab assistant secretly took a sample of the eggs and delivered it to Mark, a powerful businessman whose company extracted oil from the ocean floor. Due to his company's environmental impact, the oceans were heavily polluted. Mark understood that any deal between humans and the Homo Aqua would threaten his company, and unwilling to shut it down, he soon met with two of the highest-ranking military officers, sharing his plan to eliminate the Homo Aqua. Whether he could execute such a scheme remained uncertain. The next day, the highly anticipated meeting between Salt and Barclay commenced. From Barclay's manner of speaking, Salt immediately realized that he was merely repeating scripted statements. Observing this, she requested a glass of water. Barclay promptly fetched a glass. Yet Salt insisted that the water must be drawn directly from the nearby river. Soldiers quickly brought the water, which was extremely polluted. Despite this, Salt wanted Barclay to drink it. Alarmed at the potential health risk, Barclay firmly refused, understanding that consuming such contaminated water could make him gravely ill. Salt's demand highlighted the severity of water pollution and made Barclay realize that merely following a scripted approach would only exacerbate the situation, angering Salt and her companion. Resolving to act sincerely, Barclay spoke candidly, first apologizing for the damaged eggs, and then candidly criticizing humanity for indiscriminately polluting the oceans and environment. Upon hearing Barclay's honesty, Salt felt reassured that humans might genuinely take steps to clean the ocean. Barclay confirmed his commitment, though he requested an additional day to provide a definitive plan. During the following day's meeting, Barclay explained that cleaning the oceans would take at least 40 years, a statement that infuriated Salt. She realized that the government intended to treat this mission like any ordinary bureaucratic task, progressing at an unbearably slow pace, while she knew that, if desired, the oceans could be cleaned within a few months. Barclay also recognized the validity of Salt's assessment. Before he could respond further, Salt's fury triggered a massive storm in the city. Debris and human waste from rivers, oceans, and drains began to rain down upon the city's streets, including enormous tires, iron scraps, plastic, and various other pollutants. The storm gradually damaged the city's infrastructure, and numerous people on the roads were injured. At this time, Barbara and Carby were near the building where Barclay was present, forced to exit their vehicle to save themselves. A massive pole nearly struck Carby, but Barclay, who had anticipated the danger, managed to reach her just in time, saving her life. He then escorted both Barbara and Carby to safety inside a building. By then, remnants of the Titanic, which had sunk 113 years ago, had also washed ashore, adding to the chaos. Salt's decisive actions terrified the city's populace, and the news predicted an impending conflict between humans and Homo Aqua, suggesting that humanity might face devastating defeat. Despite the chaos, Barclay returned to Salt to speak publicly on behalf of humans, asserting that they did not desire conflict and that no further destructive action was necessary. Salt, too, did not wish to wage war against humanity. However, to ensure peace, humans had to comply with 3 conditions. First, no human would ever dispose of garbage into the ocean again. Second, a clear boundary would separate land and sea, preventing humans from entering the ocean and Homo Aqua from stepping onto land. Third, humans would refrain from utilizing the sky above the ocean in any manner. Upon hearing these conditions, many businessmen and officials became enraged, understanding that ignoring the airspace above the ocean would restrict their activities, potentially ruining their enterprises. One particularly furious man attempted to approach Salt, but she first tried to restrain him. When he refused, Salt transformed into a mermaid-like form and, in a commanding masculine voice, shouted that they would only speak with Barclay. Immediately, Barclay restored order and requested additional time to consider Salt's demands. Salt agreed to grant him this period. Salt then added a new condition. Future meetings would not take place on land. Instead, humans designated by Barclay would have to descend to the region inhabited by Homo Aqua, located 25,000 feet below the Atlantic Ocean, to converse directly. Upon hearing this, Barclay and the other officials were left completely speechless. With no alternative, Barclay accepted the challenge. Responsibility for negotiating with Salt and her companions now rested entirely on Barclay's shoulders. Consequently, he began training to breathe underwater, with explicit instructions to convince Salt to modify her 3 conditions. Once fully prepared, the team prepared to descend 25,000 feet below the Atlantic Ocean to conduct the meeting. Before departure, Barclay met his family, who were deeply anxious about whether he would return alive from such a perilous depth. Despite their protests, Barclay had no choice but to proceed, recognizing that humanity's survival depended on his actions. He embraced Barbara, who comforted him as he cried, and Carby also offered encouragement and support. Barclay and his 6-member team were then transported to the descent capsule, a spherical vessel designed to reach 25,000 feet the ocean. Austin, Ravi, and the other representatives were secured inside first. The capsule was then sealed and gradually lowered into the water using thick ropes. Ted, another representative, was also inside, carrying a handcrafted wooden globe intended as a gift to persuade Salt. Throughout the mission, Kate maintained careful oversight of every detail. However, after some time, the capsule's rope unexpectedly snapped, severing the connection to Kate. News of this event quickly spread worldwide, causing panic as no one knew whether Barclay and his team were still alive. Kit immediately rushed to Prime Minister Harry, who at that very moment was engaged in a meeting with Mark and the 2 senior army officers. These were the same officers with whom Mark had met a few days earlier to plan the complete eradication of the Homo Aquas. At that moment, even with Harry present, they were discussing strategies for how to entirely eliminate the Homo Aqua. During the conversation, one of the army officers stated that he had already begun the operation to eliminate the Homo Aquas, and that by the end of the day, a substantial number of them would be killed. How exactly this would be carried out remained a question that would soon be answered. Upon hearing this, Kate became extremely angry. She realized that Mark had also bribed Prime Minister Harry, swaying him to his side to ensure that his lucrative alert business would remain unaffected. For the time being, Kate forbade everyone present from causing any harm to the Homo Aqua. However, when no one listened to her, she left the room in a fury. Observing her departure, Mark understood that Kate would pose a significant threat to his plans in the future. Determined to protect his interests, he immediately began devising a highly dangerous and elaborate plan. Meanwhile, deep beneath the ocean, fortunately, everyone inside the capsule remained alive. Many Homo Aquas were working to cut the ropes holding the capsule and transport it to a specific location. A short while later, those inside the capsule realized that the hatch was being opened. They quickly donned their safety helmets and prepared themselves. As the hatch opened and they stepped outside, their eyes widened in astonishment. Salt's companions had brought them into an enormous underground cave where not a single drop of water was present in the air. This meant that even beneath the ocean, they could breathe freely without any difficulty. Recognizing this, Salt instructed everyone to remove their helmets. At first, the group was terrified. However, Barclay completely trusted Salt. When she approached him to remove his helmet, he did not resist, and indeed, after removing it, he could breathe easily. Seeing this, all others except Ted removed their helmets as well. Salt then led the group slightly deeper into the cave to continue their meeting. Inside the cave, numerous fish from the surrounding ocean had gathered, seemingly curious to see the humans. Barclay and his companions were astonished by the sight. They also noticed many Homo Aquas who had traveled from different corners of the world, coming specifically to hear the meeting. Salt, however, did not stop there. She continued to guide the humans carefully, urging them to move slowly and follow her. As Barclay progressed, he suddenly realized that all of his companions behind him had disappeared. At that moment, Salt fixed her gaze on him, observing him intently. Barclay's heartbeat shot up from 4 beats per minute to 64 beats per minute. Meanwhile, back at home, Kate was deeply worried about Barclay and the other 5 missing members. Suddenly, her boyfriend Christopher noticed that a sniper outside a window was aiming at Kate. As the sniper fired, Christopher pushed Kate out of the way, saving her life but taking the bullet himself, resulting in his death. The sniper continued attempting to shoot Kate. Kate struggled to maintain her composure and immediately called her agents, who arrived just in time to save her and neutralize the sniper. The sniper was identified as Russian, which left Kate furious, as she would never discover who had orchestrated the attempt on her life. Meanwhile, deep in the underwater cave, Salt reassured Barclay that all of his companions were safe and that there was no need for him to worry. She moved closer to Barclay, touching him gently. Since the moment she first saw him, Salt had developed feelings for Barclay, and she wanted to touch him at least once. Barkley, who had also begun to like her, reciprocated her touch. Despite this brief personal moment, Barkley had to focus on their main task, the meeting. During the meeting, Ted suddenly presented a globe to Salt. Upon seeing it, Salt realized in horror that the globe was not just a wooden object, but a bomb. The moment it detonated, seawater began flooding the cave, killing many of Salt's companions instantly. Salt's sole focus, however, was on saving Barkley. Using her powers, she created an oxygen bubble and provided him with breathable air. Barkley managed to survive and rise to safety with Salt, but the rest of his companions perished in the explosion. When Kate learned of the explosion, she was heartbroken, thinking Barkley and his companions had died. News of the incident spread rapidly, causing immense grief to Barbara and Carby, who missed Barkley desperately. Meanwhile, a video of Salt went viral online, falsely claiming that she had orchestrated the explosion to avenge the deaths of her children by killing Barkley and his companions. Although the video was entirely computer-generated, people believed it to be real, spreading hatred against the Homo Aquas across the internet. At that moment, a helicopter flying above the explosion site spotted Barkley and Salt. The helicopter immediately rescued Barkley. However, the soldiers on board, misidentifying Salt as a threat, captured and restrained her. Observing this, Barkley quickly called Kate on his laptop, revealing the full truth. Kate realized that the army officer had orchestrated the attempt on Salt's life and the bomb detonation in coordination with Mark. After analyzing the situation, Kate understood that Mark was behind the entire scheme. However, lacking solid evidence, Kate could not take immediate action against them. To complicate matters further, Prime Minister Harry was also involved in the conspiracy. When Barkley learned about this, he was overcome with grief because Salt had saved his life. Yet the government had captured him and treated him like a criminal, confining him in a container. The next day, Barkley returned to his city and encountered Roger at the coach station. Roger had often previously given orders to Barkley, contributing to the complicated situation he now faced. Meanwhile, the ACB prepared the container holding Salt for transport, loading it onto a truck. The truck keys were in Roger's possession. Barkley, now the official representative of his country, demanded the keys from Roger. Initially, Roger refused, but having no choice, he handed over the keys. After the container was secured, Barkley immediately boarded the truck. The officers present held him at gunpoint, but Barkley knew they would not shoot him. He drove the truck at full speed, then braked suddenly at the riverbank. The container fell into the water, and Salt emerged from it. Barkley jumped into the water to join her. Salt led him to a hidden underwater location, unknown to Hannah and the others. Because of this maneuver, the government declared Barkley a traitor on national news. Kate and her team, observing the events, were left unsure about how to save Barkley. Suddenly, alarms went off throughout the meeting building. Upon inspection, they discovered that a mermaid was approaching through the building's connected pipes, coming for a meeting. They soon discovered that through the pipes installed in the building, someone was coming back to hold a meeting with them. This revelation immediately triggered action from Kate, who, without wasting a moment, gathered her specialized team and headed straight toward the pipe's entrance. All the eyes in the room instinctively followed the same point, fixed intently on the small metallic opening, anticipating who or what would emerge. As everyone waited tensely, the question on everyone's mind was, if Salt had already escaped with Barkley, then who could possibly be arriving to hold a conversation with them now? Moments later, as the figure emerged from the pipe, a collective gasp escaped the room. It was not a mermaid at all. This was Dalpara. Everyone froze, momentarily disoriented as the gravity of the situation sank in. In reality, this time they had received Dead, a male homo who had come specifically for a meeting. Dead's anger was palpable. The underwater blast in the Atlantic Ocean, triggered previously, had infuriated him to the core. He had invited humans, believing them to be allies, but the humans had instead shown their true nature, revealing cruelty rather than friendship. Although the underwater blast had not caused significant casualties among the Homo Aquas, Tide remained adamant Salt had to be returned at once. Failure to do so, he knew, would provoke the Homo Aquas to declare an all-out war against humanity. The revelation of this imminent threat sent waves of terror rippling through everyone present in the room, yet no one truly knew where Salt had taken Barkley, which only compounded their fear and uncertainty. Despite the tension, Kate managed to calm Ted, promising him that Salt would be returned as soon as possible, but at the very least, she needed time to locate her. Convinced, Dead left the room, temporarily satisfied. Meanwhile, under the cover of night, Miss Salt had taken Barkley with her to a deserted factory far from prying eyes. The factory was completely empty, silent, and isolated, a perfect refuge for the two. There, they allowed themselves a moment of intimacy, sharing a kiss and resting together, savoring the fleeting peace amid the chaos. The two quickly formulated a plan. They would somehow escape the city and then contact Kate, who would later persuade the officers to cease all attempts to capture Salt in the future. From Salt's perspective, after speaking with Kate, it had become clear that Kate was a good person, someone trustworthy who would indeed assist them. However, escaping the city required a vehicle. Barclay and Salt navigated a desolate tunnel, strategically frightening a child passing through. They took the child's phone and used it to call Barbara, explaining their location and requesting her immediate assistance. Barbara, though cautious, agreed to come despite the presence of several officers at her home. These officers were aware that Barclay would attempt to contact Barbara upon surfacing from the water. When they discovered Bark SAS's location, they immediately mobilized, rushing toward the beach where Barclay had instructed Barbara to meet him. At the same time, the elderly officer responsible for sending Ted underwater to trigger the prior explosion was pursuing his own agenda. He intended to capture Sword and use him as a weapon. Upon discovering Barclay and Sword's locations, he set out to intercept them. Kate, aware of this, immediately called the officer, warning him not to proceed. Despite her repeated efforts, the officer refused to comply. Meanwhile, Mark, who was near the factory with Salt, spotted Barbara's car approaching. As she stepped out, Barbara urgently instructed Barclay and Salt to flee. But before they could escape, agents from the National Security Agency and the Army had strategically surrounded them from all sides. As the officers moved to seize Barclay, he quickly instructed Salt to leap into the water to escape. Salt's initial reaction was a piercing scream, so intense that the resulting vibrations caused pain in the ears of all nearby. Enraged, the Army opened fire, attempting to subdue her. With no other viable options, Salt dived into the water, escaping the immediate threat.
And with that, part 1 of this video comes to an end. But the real question is, what's going to happen next? Will they take revenge for what happened? Will they attack the humans to survive? Or is something even more dangerous about to unfold? If you want to see part 2, flood the comments with part 2 right now. I want to see how excited you really are. And here's the deal. If this video hits 1,000 likes, I'll upload the next part as soon as possible. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.